So now it's perfectly done, and now it's time to implement the login or sign up and sign in options. So first let me close these folders, let me minimize this up, and we will go to the sign up screen. That is what is visible right now. And we were over here, we were kind of have implemented this, and we were in the process of testing this out, that are we able to print that value. So let me restart the app. Okay, and if I will now enter a username, let's say I enter Sanskar Tiwari, and I enter an email ID which is going to be Tiwari Sanskar26@gmail.com. And if I implemented a password, let me just override the password. And now if I will click on this sign up, preparing to create service connection to GMS implementation, notifying ID token listener, instance of user. So this is what we get. Excuse me. So instance of user, what this is basically the user ID, right? So I can actually say dot UID. Yeah, so because it's English, so that's why I'm not able to, but I can basically do this like this. So it will actually give me the user ID as well. So yeah, that's interesting. What do I want to do once this is done? Well, I also want to make this I would just send the user to the next screen, which is I'm using push. So whenever we want to go to the next screen, we use navigator to go to different screens. Now when we use navigator, there are multiple options which we can use. We can either use push, we can use push replacement, we can use push named and remove until. Most of the time what I am usually using, you can use push named if you have defined them in the main, which we have not done for this one. So what we will be doing, we will be using either push replacement, or there are pop, push, and others like that. So what is the difference between push and push replacement is, for example, there are some screens in which we want to give the user an option that he can click on the back button, or he can go back to the last screen which he was in. But screens like sign up, sign in are not the screen which are like that. When the user sign in or sign up to the app and he goes to the home screen, we don't want the user to be able to click on the back button and go back to the sign in or sign up screen. So we will be using a push replacement for this. When we use push, basically another screen is placed above the screen in which we are right now. So the user gets an option that he can click on the back button, and that screen in which he was will be closed, and the screen which he was before will be in front of him. But if we use push replacement, it will actually replace the screen which we are in. So he will not be able to click on the back button and go back to the sign up screen, which is the actual requirement of ours. So this is actually a little bit not looking perfect. All right, so I'm just going to refactor it a little bit. And for this, so first we will name it like this, then context. Over here we will use material page route. So there are different kind of like how we are transitioning from one page to another. We are going to use this material one, which is available right out of the box, and then we are going to say builder. In this particular builder, you have to provide the context of the screen in which we are right now and in which we want to go. So we want to go to the it is called, I think, chat rooms. So I think I have not implemented this, so let me go back to that chat room screen and implement that. So first we will start by importing material. Then I'm going to create a stateful widget which is going to be called chat room. Okay, now I can call this chat room from here. So I can say chat room. Okay, now this should be working perfectly fine. So now let me restart the app again. We have an error, so that is the semicolon, expected semicolon after this. Let me restart the app again. Okay, and it's working perfectly fine. So now let me go ahead and do that username sign in again. So I'm going to type it a little bit faster this time. So I will say Tiwari Sanskar, and I'll say email to be sanskartiwari@gmail.com, and then I will provide a password, and that is going to be some random password. Now I will click on the sign up. And what actually should happen is we should be sent to this screen once we get that UID. Either I have given the same email ID which I have provided before, which can be the reason why it's not logging in. Actually, yeah, I have used this Sanskar Tiwari before. So let me do one thing. Let me get rid of this, delete this account and delete this one as well, and go ahead and restart this again. Now let me type that again. So I'm going to type Sanskar Tiwari. What am I doing? Sanskar Tiwari Sanskar. So I will write the same thing. Tiwari Sanskar @gmail.com. It's going to be Gmail. You can write anything you want. It's just my preference. Click on write, sign up. Okay, so once he will click on this, we should be able to print the UID, which is the user ID, and then we will send the user to the next screen. If for some reason this is not working, we have a problem. So to just confirm that, let me just scroll in a bit. We are calling this function. It says that invoke one dispatch pointer data packet. Okay, seems like it's not it's null, especially this one when we are fetching this. So I'm just going to comment this out, because we will be able to understand this even if the user gets sent to the next screen. We have already printed this, so we know that it works. Yeah, so let me restart that. Maybe this UID, actually we have a different, we actually have a U capital ID. I think that may be the reason. So let me do it again. Tiwari Sanskar @gmail.com, and let's provide it a password. Okay, so you can see we have successfully done that. The error which we were facing was basically this is not the correct format of the UID which we have. So inside the model of this one, the user model, as it was saying that instance of model received, right? So it is capital I. That was the problem. So once I removed that, it's working perfectly fine. We are now in the chat room. So as we have a container over here, that's why the whole screen is black. We will first change this container to scaffold. Once I will do that, it will be totally kind of a black as well, but a little bit lighter shade of that, which we provided ourselves, which was like 1F something. Okay, so the first thing which we will do, we will provide the app bar to this. So it will be app bar main, which is a very easy to provide one. But here's the interesting thing. We are not going to use this over here, because we actually want to provide a logout option over here. So to provide that logout option, we are going to use something called, just a second, we have image. Where is the title? Okay, so just after this we can use something called actions, in which we can define all of these things, like for example logout. So what I can say, I can basically use either image. I'm going to use icon for this one. I'm going to say icon, which is a widget. I can say icons dot, I'm going to use this exit to app icon. So if I will save this, you can see that this is this title which we have provided, the app bar. And we have this icon as well for the action. So whatever action you add, it will start to be added from this side. One thing which I also want to do is I want to give some padding, because I think this space is not the best option how it looks. It's like kind of really stick with the edge, which is not the kind of way I want it to look like. So I'm just going to grab it and wrap it in a container, and I'm going to provide it a padding, which is going to be edge insets.symmetric. The reason why I'm using symmetric while we don't actually need a padding from this side is because I want to give the user an option so that he can click on it easily, because right now what will happen, he actually have to just click on this icon. But if I will provide a horizontal padding a little bit more, then it will be much easier for the user who so that they can click on this easily. Then I will wrap it with a gesture detector. On that gesture detector, we are going to have an on tap functionality, and when someone clicks on this particular button, I just want to sign out the user or log out, you like we say. So I'm going to say sign. It's not actually that simple, so we have to first call the function this one. So auth methods, let's define that above as we did before. We will say auth methods, and we will say auth methods is equals to new auth methods instantiating, whatever it's called, and you have to just say dot sign out. It's that simple. So the user will be signed out, but we don't want to show this screen after that. So what I will do, I will say navigator dot push replacement. Okay, I'm sending him to the sign in screen. I don't want him to come back. Okay, now here is the important part which we have not implemented yet. we want the user to be able to switch between these screen of sign in and sign up, as well as we want to send the user to a particular screen from there. So for now, let me just send the user by using material page route context. Let me send the user right now to sign in screen. But actually what we will do, we will create another widget. You can call it a helper widget, or yeah, you can call it a helper widget. It's not going to be an actual kind of one, but yeah. So not creating a widget directly. First we need to create a folder or package depending on you are using VS Code or Android Studio respectively. So the package name is going to be helper. That's what I'm going for. Inside this helper, I'm going to create a Dart file which is going to be called authenticate. Okay, this is going to be authenticate.dart. In this one specifically, what we want to do, we will return either sign in screen or sign up screen. So here's the problem. What is the problem is when I will switch back to the sign up screen, in some cases I do want to provide that back function of functionality. But what will happen eventually if we have that, you know, kind of push option, it will like stack of sign in and then sign up above it, and then if we click on login again, it will be another sign in above it, and it becomes a little bit hard to kind of manage that. So what is a better approach for that is basically create an authenticate widget, which will be a single widget which will comprise of both of these, sign in and sign up. Okay, so once the user will click on any of this register, now we are not actually switching any kind of a full widget. We are just switching a particular widget by setting the set state. So what do I mean by all of that will be let me show you what I mean by. So first we will create a stateful widget over here. Why I am creating a stateful widget, because there will be things which are going to be changed inside of this widget. So first we will import material. I'm going to say stateful widget, and this widget is going to be called authenticate. If things does not make much sense right now, don't worry, they will. It's just a matter of time, so don't worry about that. Okay, so what I will do, initially the user should be presented with a sign in screen, but once he will click on the register screen, he should see the sign up screen. So let me make a boolean value which is going to be bool, and it is going to be called show sign in. Okay, and let me make that initially true. Okay, so initially it is true, which means initially it will be showing sign in screen. Now we are not going to directly return a container or something, but actually we are going to use the condition thing again. Okay, so as we did before. So what we will do, we will say show sign in. Okay, the same thing which we did. Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, in the services, as I explained before, this one condition if true and false. Right? So that's kind of how we will try this one out as well. Actually, it will become a little bit complex that way. So let's use a if else condition. So how if else condition works? We will basically say if this is this, then do this is this, else do this is that's how it works. First, let me get rid of this return statement, and now I'm going to have else. Now, so we have this show sign in. So if it is show sign in, then I would like to return sign in screen. Easy. Hopefully it is understandable. Okay, but if it is not sign in, which means it is sign up, right? So because that is the only two options available, so we will return the sign up screen. I believe it's easy, it's understandable at least till now. Now we want to create a function so that we can switch between these different screens. So let's name that function toggle or something like that, and that function is going to return nothing. That's why I'm saying void as a return type. Now I'm going to say toggle view, and this is basically how we define a function. We have no arguments, and this is how we do. So now I can say set state. Now here's what we can do. We can check if this show sign in is true, and we can make it false, and we can check if else, like if it is false, then set it to true. But a shorter version of that would be show sign in is equals to not show sign in. So if it was like if it was true, it will assign the value of false to it. If it is false, then it will assign the value of true to this. I would like you to give it a second if you're not clear about it. What basically is happening when the user will call this function, it is going to switch the whatever this is. So if it is going to be true, then not true is going to be false, correct? So the false value will be assigned to this. If this is false, then not false is going to be true, then that value is just going to assign to this. So that is the whole reason why we created this function. Okay, now we don't actually want to call this function from any of this particular authenticate.data, right? Because we don't have the widgets over here. We actually have the widgets inside the sign in and sign up screen. So what we have to do is we have to send this function in these particular screens, in the sign in and sign up, and we have to access this function and call this function from them, and that's how it should work. Okay, so to accept these functions, what we have to do, we have to create a final function. Okay, and this function, this is the data type, right? We can accept string as from other things, string, we can accept any kind of data type. We are accepting a function right now. I'm going to call it toggle, as we have named that before, there. To accept this value, we are going to use constructor. Okay, so over here I will say this dot toggle. Now what I can do, it will actually show an error over here. So I have to now pass this function over here. So now you can see we can pass this function here. Makes sense. Now we are able to accept this function. The next step is to switch between these two different screens. So we will be wrapping this up in a container. Just wanted to provide it a little bit of a padding, at least at the top and bottom, something like that, so that it's easy to click. I don't want the user to be able to a kind of pinpoint or basically making it really hard for him to click on it. So I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to wrap that particular register now with a container, and then I'm going to wrap with a widget, and that widget is going to be gesture detector. Why am I wrapping it up in a gesture detector? Because I want to do something when someone clicks on it. So when someone clicks on it, I just want to call this particular function toggle. Now the problem is this function is not actually defined inside of sign in state and this particular one, but actually it's defined in this main sign in one. When we use the stateful, these two kinds of two things are generated, right? So to access this particular toggle, inside of this one, we have to say widget dot toggle, and now we will be able to access that. So now this is how we are going to be able to switch between them. So let's do the same thing for sign up. I'll go inside the sign up. Actually we have to do the same thing, so I'm going to just copy these two lines. Where are you, sign up? You are here. Okay, so we will paste this over here, and obviously the constructor and the name of that are like kind of same. So this should be sign up as well. This is toggle, and we are accepting toggle now. So once we are accepting the toggle, we want to call it like widget.toggle, and it's actually by using a gesture detector above it. So I'm going to do the same for the sign in now. I'm going to wrap it in a container and provide that a padding vertically, which is going to be edge insets dot symmetric, which is going to provide a vertical padding of around 8, and we are going to wrap that container with a widget which is going to be called gesture detector, and we are going to paste this on tab functionality. Now we are actually facing some errors, so you can just click on dart analysis whenever you feel something like that, but I think we have the problem with this one. So if I will paste this, okay, now if I will click on this, we are actually calling this sign up in the initial. Now we don't have to call this, we will be actually calling the authenticate. So I will say authenticate over here, and let me copy that. If we go to the chat room, we don't want to call sign in, we will be calling authenticate, and to call this we actually need to import that, so that's done now. Okay, we don't need a semicolon over here, we actually need a semicolon over here when we are using a navigator.push replacement, or we are using push. Every time we actually need at the end of this semicolon, not inside of this. Okay, other than this, these are the unused import in this one, which we can get rid of by using Control Option O, or you can directly delete them. Control Option O. Okay, so these are gone. Now what we want to do, so once we have this screen, inside of this screen to work, we are going to go inside the chat room screen.dart. I'll be closing others so that we are not distracted. Now let's focus on this and create work on the body. So for now, let's not work on the body, since we have not initially yet created the chat rooms. So the first thing which I will do, I will create a floating action button. So as I mentioned before, scaffold is something which have all these material widget built in, so we can use them out of the box. We don't have to create them from scratch. For example, for creating a floating action button, we may be required to create a container which is actually having a little bit elevation. It will have a child of icon. Then there are different properties which we need to set. We have to make it like at this particular corner, but this particular floating action button we don't have to. We just call the floating action button. We can provide it a child which I can call, for example, icon, and icons dot, I'll be using the search icon because that's where we want to send the user to. And if I will save this for now, you can see we have this button available. One thing which I also want, I want to provide a on pressed property. So when we click on this, we want to do something. So let me check out if my search screen is available. So we have not yet created that search screen where we will be searching the user. So let me go ahead and create a new .5 and let me name it search. Okay, if you're using VS Code, you may find this a little bit problem that if you don't type dot, it will not be writing it for you. So just make sure to write dot. I'm little late to tell this, but just make sure this one. Okay, now what you have to do, now you have to say navigator dot push. Before we do continue, we have to actually create this stateful widget so that we can actually call from there. So I can first do import material, and then I'm going to create a stateful widget. Why stateful again? Because it will be we will be changing the state of it. We will be updating some data. If the data is very static, then in that case we can use a stateless widget. Okay, so when we're using a stateful widget, we want to call this one particularly search screen. And if I will go over here, I will use the material page root as we have used before as well. In material page root, we have a builder. Inside builder, we basically pass in the context of the screen in which we are, and then we send by using the arrow, we show that we want to go to this screen. So I'm going to say search screen. It's going to be automatically imported. If it's not importing, just click on this like this, click on this, it will show you an option to import that. Okay, once that all is done, again, we don't need a semicolon here, we will be requiring a semicolon over here. So now if I will save this and click on this, you can see we are again in this search screen which is having a container. That's why we are seeing this black screen, which we don't actually want, right? We want this to be a scaffold. So I'm going to convert that to a scaffold, and I'm going to make use of app bar main. I don't think we require anything special in this, so let me just check that out. I'm going to minimize this. Search for the last app which we worked on. It was called chat app. Just to have a look of how we want the search to look like, we can close this one. We have successfully completed that one. Okay, so this looks like this. We click on the search. Let me grab some screenshots. If I search Sanskar Tiwari, SANSKAR, and now I'm going to grab a screenshot of this one. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this one. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this one, and now I can close this app. Okay, so the first, let me minimize this one and this one as well. We have a lot of screenshots going on, so let me open up this one and I'll place it over here. And yeah, now let's see how we can create this kind of screen. So in this one, we don't have something very special. If I will save this now, we just have added app bar. It will just change the kind of color. It will have the app bar, and this back button is going to be already there because we used push, not push replacement. Hopefully that is clear to you. The next step is we want to create this kind of search. So this is basically a container with a padding at this horizontally and a vertical padding as well. And then inside that container as a child, we have a row which consists of a text field and an image. This is an image. It's not an icon. It's an image. That image is also wrapped in a container, and that container have a gradient color provided to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and build this thing. So I'm going to go inside the body. I'm going to say container. Inside container, the thing is actually one thing which you can understand is just below this particular one. Let me show you like that. Okay, So just below this one, we will actually be showing not a list exactly, but the user when we search for the results, right? So this is actually a vertical arrangement of different widgets. So that's why we will be using a column for this. So inside the container, I'm going to say column, and inside of that children. Okay, so inside that column, because now we are inside this, okay, we are over here. Now inside of that column, which is a vertical arrangement of different widget, we have first widget is actually this row, which is this one. So let's create that. So I'll say row will have children. Children first one is called text field. Second one is going to be image, specifically asset image, assets slash image, which is going to be this I think search white. Yeah, this is the one. So to use this, what we will do, we will first write the path like this. So assets, which is this one, images, which is images, okay, and then slash the name of that. So it's going to be search underscore white dot png, then a semicolon, no semicolon, just a space will be fine to get rid of that red. Okay, so if I will save this for now, it will actually not show anything. The reason being, it's when we write this text field and an image inside a row, it gets a little bit confused. How should I structure this text field? Because text field can actually take the whole space. So that's what we will say. We will wrap this text field inside an expanded widget, which basically provides us a kind of a permission that go ahead and use as much space as you want. So as much space is available, it will go ahead and expand itself into that. So if I will save this now, hopefully it should be visible, which it is. So you can see we have this image and we have this text field as well. So we can actually go ahead and write something which is definitely not visible perfectly, since it is black and the scaffold color is black as well. Okay, so how can we implement this particular kind of search? So from this to this, before and after. So let's see how we can do that. So first, let's start by overall wrapping it up in a container. The reason for that is because we want to provide a padding. So I'm going to say padding, and then I'm going to say edge insets dot symmetric, because the padding is symmetric. What do I mean by that? It is same for left and right. It is same for top and bottom. Okay, so now let's provide that. So I'm horizontally, as much as I can't recall, I think it's 24. Vertically it's around 16. So if I would see that, it is actually visible. I'm not sure how it is like that, but yeah. Now we have to convert this to this long journey ahead. Okay, so first thing first, let's provide that. So if I get rid of, so initially it was written username, I think search username, right? So how do we provide that hint text? By using input decoration. Now we actually have done this decoration part in the sign in sign up screen, so we don't have to go ahead and create it from scratch. Rather, what we will be doing, we will be just using the same decoration and pasting that up. Now there is actually a little bit problem in this one, because it's going to give us that border which we don't actually want. So let's go ahead and do that from scratch. So I'm going to say hint text first. So it's going to be search username, and then I'm going to provide the hint style, and hint style is going to be text style with a color option, and color I'm going to provide a white and a shade of 54, because we want to make sure that the hint text and the actual text look different, right? And that's how it works. So you can see search username is visible. Now we don't want this border, this one, right? This one. So how to get rid of that? Well, it's very easy. You just have to go inside this input decoration, not inside the text style. You have to type it in border, I think. Yeah, then border, and then you have to write import border.net. Now you can see it's successfully gone. So that is done. The next part is providing that color to this. So the color is like this particular color, which is actually a kind of an opacity color. So to get that, you just have to close this one. Where is it? We are in search. So search. There will be a color actually. I think this one it is. No. This one it is. Search username. Right. This is the one. So let me copy that and provide that over. Okay, so hopefully you can see this particular color. This color as well. And now if I will type something over here like Sanskar Diwali. We have to provide styling for that one as well. So I'm just going to grab this styling and not in the expanded, actually over here in the text field I'll say style and provide this one. I will not use the 54 one, but actually the direct shade, so that I can make sure that the hint text in this looks different. Okay, so yeah, now it's perfectly arranged. We want to work on this now. So I will first, what I will wrap this one inside a container, and I will give it a fixed height, which is going to be 40, and I will give it a fixed width, which is going to be 40. There is no size change, so what I will do, I will try to do some padding. So I'll say padding edge insets dot all, because I want it from all the sides, since it's a circle. So kind of circle, that's what we want to build. So yeah, now it looks a little bit smaller. I think we can go for something like 12 as well. It just depends. Yeah, I think 12 is a little bit more. I can just go with 10. Okay, now we want to provide it a color, which is actually a gradient, right? So to provide gradient, what do we use? We use decoration, and then we use box decoration. Inside box decoration, we use gradient, then we will say linear gradient. Inside that, we can directly provide the colors. So I have not remembered the memorize these, so let me copy them up. Okay, so now this linear gradient, this accepts color. So color is actually a list of different things. So to accept that list, we will create these kind of square brackets, and inside that we can pass on these colors. So if I will save this now, you can see it's visible. But we also want to provide that border radius to it. So how can we provide the border radius? First, let's get out of these linear gradient, and we will say border radius. Since the border radius is to be provided from each and every corner, which is like from all the sides, we will say border radius dot circular, and we will provide the radius which we want to. So for this one, it's much better to just go for the same radius, and it will make that particular one circular. Now, as much as I can see, I think the padding in this one is a little bit more than this one. So I'm just going to increase that a little bit, not much, maybe by 2. So I'm going to call it 2. So now if I will save this, it looks something similar. Okay, so the next step is actually creating this list. And before creating this list, we actually want to create a function which we can call. So basically now we will have this thing. This text, but we have this expand text field, but we want to actually know what is written in this one, right? So how did we did that in sign in and sign up screen? We used, call it text editing controller. Okay, yeah. So how do we do it over here? Same, we will use the text editing controller. It will be called over here search text editing, sorry, controller is equals to new text editing controller. Okay, so we have this. I made the same mistake again. Text CARCH. This should be capital. Okay, that was not an error, it was just a suggestion, but anyhow, yeah. So now we have defined the controller. We basically defined a controller like this. We have done this before as well. So now I will just assign it to this. So I will say controller, and this is going to be search text editing controller. So now what this provides as an option is, if to get the text what is written on this particular text field, we can just say search text editing controller dot text, and it will provide us that particular text. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a function to search for these particular details. So for that, we will go inside. Actually, this was the auth service. Now let's create another file, which is going to be database dot dart. Similar to the auth one, we will be creating database methods that should be called. And inside of, no, it does not need this. This is not a function. This is a class. This does not accept arguments. To give arguments to the class, we use constructor. Okay, let's move on. So in this one, we will be creating the first function, which is actually to search for the users. So how are we going to do that? So for that, let me first show you how the database of ours looks like. So initially, when you will click on this database at this side, it will show you something like this. Okay, Cloud Firestore, real-time updates, powerful queries, automatic scaling. So just click on create database. It will give you two options. You can start in production mode, you can start in test mode. So we are going to go with the production mode, but the production mode is actually offering us this one. This all third-party read and write will be denied. because it says allow read and write if false, which means the condition is directly written false. So it's there is no chance for it to be true. So what we will do, we will basically change this to true for now. So click on next, done. It will take a second or so. In that particular meantime, let's name our function. So what should we name? So we will say get users, or let's say get user by username. We can call this by username. So we will accept the username over here and username, and then we want to return all of these different properties which we have, you know, like the one which we can see that we want the name, we want the email ID, and when we click on this button we will create a chat room. So there's a lot of things which are going to happen. So first let me clear you what this Firestore thing is, how it works. So Firestore is very simple to understand. Let me give you an idea. It works like a notebook. If you understand, like we have a notebook. Let me name my notebook science, or let me name it users. Okay, this is a notebook which I have, and that notebook have multiple pages. This is the one page. So obviously every page is randomly, right? There are two kind of people. Some people write numbering on each and every page of their notebook, but I don't. So I'm going to auto generate it. If you are someone who writes manually, then you can give it a proper name as well. Now each page in my notebook have a particular detail. So it can be name, and that name can be Sanskar. Now that particular fields or the different kind of data which I have, that can be of string, that can be type of number, boolean, map, array, null, timestamp, geopoint, references, and more. Okay, so if I will save this, you can see how it looks like over here. Okay, so this is how it will look like when we have a users and we will have this. Okay, so before we can actually find the user, we should be able to, whenever the user signs up, we must upload his data to our storage, so that later on when the other user is searching for him, we can search. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So before creating this function, we have to actually create a function to upload userInfo. And how am I thinking to do that? I'm thinking to do that like this. I will have a users collection. Okay, this is how the book thing works. So this is called a collection. Collection can have unlimited amount of documents. Okay, and each document can have different fields. So this is a key value pair, if you know about it, right? Key value pair map. So that's how it is. Interestingly, each and every document can have a collection inside of it as well. So that is interesting, and we are actually going to use that. So yeah, I hope you're excited for that. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So to upload the user info when the users log in, we can see we want the name, and I will be uploading the email as well, something random, something @gmail.com, like this. So we will have two fields. First is going to be email and second is going to be name. So let's keep it like this, email and name. So how we can do that? So let me first make this function accept two variables. The first one is going to be name and the second variable is going to be email ID. So for this one, we will be using Firestore, the package which we installed before, Cloud Firestore. So I'll be calling Firestore .instance .collection. Okay, so this collection is called users. So let me call that users dot, and then actually I want to add this particular map. This is a map. What is a map? Map is a collection of key value pairs. Okay, this is called key and this is called value. So that is what is uploaded. Now if you are someone like me who don't write number on each and every page of his notebook, then you can directly say add, and it will give you an option to directly add a map. If you are someone who writes 1, 2, 3 on each and every one of your pages, then you can also write it like this: document, and then there will be dot set data. When you can set, well, you know me, I don't write 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm just going to do add, but you can do both ways. So now you can see we also we actually need this data, not these individually like this. So I'm just going to accept this, and converting these values to map will be done where I'm calling this upload user info function. What do I mean by that? If you're a little bit confused, don't worry, just carry on watching and I'll make sure everything is clear. Okay, so we will be accepting this one, and let's name it user map. That's what I named it. This is a map of user. Okay, now we will add a semicolon. So that's how we define the function of upload user info. Now where we are going to call this function from? We are going to call this function from the sign up screen. So let's open up the views, go to sign up, and once we are logging in over here, we will be setting these data. So I'll say upload user info. Now this is going to accept map, and we cannot call it directly. We actually need to call it like this. How we do for auth methods, we will say database methods is equals to new database methods, and now I can say just a second, database methods dot upload user info. Now this is going to accept a map. So first let's define that map. So as I mentioned before, what is a map? Map is a collection of key value pairs, and when we define any variable, whether it is list, not variable, when we define things like list, which is actually a collection of something, we have to define the data type of that value. The type of value will have a collection of. So similarly for the map, we have to define the data type of the key and the value. So the key is email, which is actually a string, and something at @gmail.com, which is the value, is actually a string as well. So that is the thing for all of these. None of these is, for example, let's say if we have had a field, for example, some field, for example, points, okay, points, and that field was actually integer number 0. In that case, we will actually make our data type of our value dynamic, because we don't have it a string everywhere. But for our use case, it will be string everywhere. So what I will do, I will make we will define the data type of key, so that is going to be string. Then for the value, which is a string as well. Now let's name the map. We will say user info map, which is going to be equals to, now to define a list we use this, to define a map we use this. Let's end it with a semicolon, and now let's go ahead and add different value. So you may know how we add different things in a list, as we have done in colors when we were providing the linear gradient, remember. Now to add different values to the map, we will basically first name the key, which is going to be name. As you can see over here, it's make sure this is exactly same, right? Name, like don't make it like name or something, just make it exactly like this. In this particular one, what is the value which I want to provide? Well, I want to provide this username value. So I'll say username dot text at controller, then I will say dot text. This will provide me the text which is available over there. Then I'll say comma. The next thing is I want to save the email as well. So I'll say email text editing controller dot text. Once I'm done with that, these have actually created a map for us, and we can copy this and paste it over here, and it will actually go ahead and create a map for us. Okay, so this is how we will be uploading the data. So let me go back, log out. Okay, that's interesting, it's working. And also see, this register and sign in is working, which we implemented when we were doing the authenticate one. Hopefully you remember. Also, if you have any doubts, just feel free to comment them down below. I'm always happy to help, and or also you can reach out to me on Instagram or things like LinkedIn is a best option, but yeah. Okay, so what is next? Well, the next thing is, first let's test this out. So is the registration working? So Sanskar, let me name this like this, sanskar@gmail.com. Password is going to be something random, and then I'm going to click on sign up. Before that, let me confirm this is users, a random document ID, and the data will be added. That's how we want things to work. So we said users, okay, and a map will be added. Okay, so let's click on the sign up. So it's loading. So loading means we have done this loading, then we have done this. Once this was done, then we created the map, then we uploaded the map, and then we pushed the user. So if this is done, this will be done as well. So let's see if we have any value. Right now it's not visible, so let's reload this page and see if any kind of value is added over here or not. Okay, so a value is not added. Here's the reason for that. We actually forgot to change the rules. As I mentioned before, we will be changing this to true because it is false right now. So allow read and write is false. So we have to change this to true to make it work so that we can actually upload any data to this one. So you just have to change it, and it will give you an option to discard or publish. Just click on publish and it will be done for you. Now let's go ahead and log out again, register, and this time let me register with Tiwari @gmail.com. And let me click on sign up. This time it should be added over here. So basically a random ID will be generated and the data will be added, the email and name. So let me reload this one if it's working fine or not. Okay, so it's not the data is not actually added. Let me confirm. So we have actually allowed the read and write properties, that is fine. But if we talk about user data, we have not been able to do so. Okay, so we are facing an error. To get what is the error, we will be using this catch error. Here we will create a function which is going to accept E, which is being returned kind of, which will be available if you do it like this, and then you can print the error which we are facing. So run. I have created a lot of not required emails, so let me just get rid of 2 of those. Sanskar Tiwari. Okay, so let me log out, register, Sanskar, sign up. If any kind of error is happening, it will be visible over here. So notifying Firebase Auth, get API, get selected text on input on inactive input connection. So okay, inactive. Okay, I think we are not able to get that text over there. Let me see. Over here, like we are actually getting the text, but for some reason we are not able to get the text. Maybe not. Let's see if the database is added or not. If it's not, then there is an error. If it is added, then there is not. Really self-explanatory. Okay, so it's not added, so there is an error. The error is actually that text we have email username dot text, we have email editing controller dot text, then we are sending the user to the next screen. Okay, so one problem can be that we are not actually waiting till this is done, maybe because it is showing us these errors. Okay, it says that get text before cursor on inactive input connection. So get selected text on inactive input connection. This it is saying this again and again, which is that the input connection, how I can understand this, for the text field is inactive. So it was inactive when we actually are asking for these details. So the inactive is basically because we are actually showing loading, not that. So what I am going to do, I'm going to create this map even before we do this. Okay, but only update it once we will do that. So let me restart the app again. Let me delete that Tiwari Sanskar. No, Sanskar. And let's register again. So I'm going to click on register, and username will be Tiwari. Email will be Tiwari Sanskar sanskar@gmail.com. Password is going to be, and then let's click on sign up. This time it should work. So hopefully this is clear to you what happened. The problem was when we made this loading true, these text field was not visible or basically not active, right? That's why what was happening was that we were not able to get the text from the text field because it is not there, right? It is not there. So what was happening is if we call it after this, then we were not able to get the text. Which was understandable by seeing this error, which is get selected text on inactive input connection. Now some people do have commented that why do you make some do errors in the while doing these codings when making a tutorial like live. So I just want to clear this is actually going to be very beneficial, so make sure to remember this as well, that get selected text on inactive component input connection. So this kind of things happens, then understand that from wherever you are getting the text, it's not visible to the screen at that particular moment of time. So make sure to call or get that text before you are changing that. Okay, so now you can see we have this details available over here. So now if I go over to the search, now we can implement the feature of search the user by the username. So what exactly do I want? Well, I would like to show something like this. So what I have is the username. So I will be searching the user by the username, and I want to show the username and the email ID. Okay, so how we can do that? So first we have to go inside this users, and I have to search for where the this is equals to define. So how can we do that? Let's go and do that. So I'll say firestore dot instance dot collection. The collection is called users. Inside that I'll have I have a map. We have order by option. We have get documents. Okay, we have to use this dot where, and we will say name. I'm not sure. I think this is the name is equal. Let me see. Name is equal to comma. Okay, yeah. Where name is equals to username. I think then we will say get documents. Correct. So basically what we are doing, we are saying firestore.instance.collection users. We are going inside this users and we are making a query. Queries basically, we are not actually getting all of these and then searching inside of our app. That does not make sense, because right now we just have one user or two user. But if we have 1 million, I know not every app does, but even if you have thousands of users, it's not the best practice to download that all the users data and then search for the information which we need, but rather sending the query to our database. That's what we did over here. We basically said that we only want the document where name, this is the key, name equal to the username which we provided. Okay, so let's see if this is working or not. So how do we want this to work? We basically want to provide this container a click property. So to provide that, we will wrap it in a widget which is called gesture detector. Hopefully you guessed it. In the on tap functionality, we want to just basically call this particular function. And now how to call this function? You know it. First we will say database method, then we will say database method, basically instantiating, and that is what it is called, I think. Now you can simply go ahead over here and say database methods dot get user by username, and you have to just pass in the username. So the username is search text editing controller dot text, and let me save that. So if I will type Tiwari over here, obviously we have not implemented the list, so what can we do? We can actually return this so that we can kind of use this over there, and we can also await for this. We don't want this to be like, I have already explained this like before. If we will getting before we are able to get the data, then it will be null all the time. So now since we are getting this data, now we can say dot then this is the value which we are going to accept, and we can do something with that value. So what I am going to do, I am going to just print that value. So let me click on this search. So you can see we have this instance of query snapshot, which is basically what we have over here. Okay, so now since we have this, what we basically want, we want to actually show this data in a list. And obviously that list is actually going to have a single tile, which means a single list item, but obviously we will be using a list. So I'm going to say widget. This widget is going to be search list, and over here I'm going to make this like this is going to return a list view dot builder. List view dot builder consists of two very important properties. The first one is called item counts, the second one is called item builder. So the item builder is going to have index, the context and index, and we are going to return a particular tile. So this is not kind of out of the box kind of thing. We actually have to first create this tile so that we can load data on this, and we basically need to call it from here. So how can we do that? We will go outside of this widget, which is the stateful widget of our search screen. We will create a stateless widget. Why am I creating a stateless widget? Because I know in this particular one, this one, there is nothing which is going to update. Once we have set it Sanskar Tiwari here, it's also always going to be Sanskar Tiwari. Okay, so let's use that. So I'm going to call this search tile. This is just the naming convention I use for naming my list items, using the tile name after that, just easy for me to understand. Okay, so inside this child, again, why do I have a container when these are basically aligned horizontally widget and things like that? Well, I want to use the container because I can see there is some kind of padding horizontally as well as vertically provided. So that's why. Now, since these widgets are actually overall they are arranged, they are kind of two widgets. They can be divided into two widgets which are arranged horizontally. So we will be using row for that, and then we have these two widgets, which is text, arranged one above the other vertically. So we will be using column for that. Inside this column, we are going to use the text. Now this text is actually, I think, okay. Now one thing is which is very important. This text is not going to be predefined. This is something which is the value is going to be accepted over here, like we have done in sign up, sign in. Obviously, this is a stateless widget, so it will be directly accessible. We don't have to call widget dot the variable name, correct? Which we done over here, because when we created this toggle, to call this toggle function, we have to call widget dot toggle. That was something for a stateful widget, but when we are using a stateless widget, we don't have to. So let me go ahead and create the variable. Why am I creating them final again and again? Because once we get the value, it's static. It's not going to change. That's why I'm using final over here. Similarly, that's why I used in the sign in and sign up, because the function is not going to change once we receive that. Okay, so what are the different values which we need in this search tile? So as I can see, there are two different variables which we have. First is the username, second is the email. So both of these are string data type. So I'm going to say string, and I'm going to say user name, and then I'm going to say final, and I'm going to say string user email. Now this will be showing an error because we made them final without even providing them any kind of value, right? That like kind of does not make sense. What are you making final of? So yeah, we have to get the value of these through the constructor. So I'm using like this. Now the reason why I'm using these curly braces, because these are called named parameters. What these helps is basically you don't have to directly provide the value like this we have done, but rather first you define what you are providing and then you provide the value. What do I mean by that? We will see that. Let me show you that quickly so that you're clear about this. So now we can call username and then provide the value. Now we can call user email and then provide the value rather than directly provide the value. This basically helps if you have a lot of variables going on there. So now I can directly show username. If we talk about style, I'm going to go for simple text style if we have that, and then I'm going to say text user email, and I'm going to go style simple text style. If I will see this, we are actually facing an error above because we have not provided all the values. That's fine. Let's first complete this one. So after the collection, we actually want as much space as we can, and then we want this container Okay, we have already created this kind of button in the sign up. So hopefully this is clear to you to see that, okay, this is going to be a container which is going to have a text as a child, and the text which is going to be written is going to be message. Now we can also see that it is going to have some padding which is visible over here, and here you can see it have a padding vertically and horizontally as well. So let me make that symmetric, because I can see that is symmetric, that is equal in both sides, top and bottom and right and left. So I'm going to say I'm going to provide it a horizontal padding of 16 and let's say vertical padding of around 8. I can also see there is some kind of color which is blue color, and also I can see there is a border radius provided to that. So whenever we have these both things like a color and border radius, if we directly have a color only, then we can directly provide it like this by saying colors dot blue. But if we have two properties, colors and border radius both, then we have to provide the color inside of the decoration as well. So I'll define the box decoration, which is box decoration for this one, and then what we will provide the color. So the color is going to be colors.blue. Okay, the next thing is going to be the border radius which we want to provide. So the border radius, because we can see it's available from all the different sites, which is the top like all the 4 sites. So we will going to go and use border radius dot circular, and we are going to provide around 13 maybe for this. I'm not sure if 13 is going to work since we want a lot border radius, so I'm just going to go for 30 and I'm going to save it over there. Since we have these errors above, let's solve them now. Okay, so the thing which we are doing over here is when we click on this particular search button, we are getting the value and we are printing that. That's not the exact requirement what we have. We actually want to show this data in a list view. So how we can do that? Well, the best option should be to actually not get this data over here, but to get this data over in a function over here. And once we get that data, we should set it to a variable which is accessible from here as well as here. So let me create a function for this. I'm going to call that function initiate search, and yeah, let's go ahead and create this function. This is going to be called initiate search, and we will do all of this thing inside of this rather than providing or printing this value, because we know what is it. It's instance of query snapshot. So we are going to say query snapshot search snapshot, and rather than printing that value, I'm going to just provide that to this one. Now we will be using this to get the item count, how many different documents we have. We know that we are only saving one, but we can see. So I can say documents.length. So this will provide me the length of that, which is going to be 1, but yeah, that's why. So now we want the username. So how can we get that? So I'm going to say search snapshot dot documents. I don't want all the documents. I want the single one, which is going to be at the 0th position always. So I can say dot. We can actually say index as well, not a problem, because we know that it's just one. So index dot data, and then we can provide the key. So the key is name. Let me just copy this all, because this is going to be same and this is going to be email. Okay, now let's copy this search list and show it just below this particular search container, like that. So if I will see this, we have an error. We have to use a semicolon once we add this. Okay, we have this saved. One thing which we need to also take care of, that initially this is search snapshot is going to be null. You can see we haven't provided value. This value is only going to be provided once this function is called, but this function is not being called. So how can we call this function? Well, whenever the screen starts, there is a function with every stateful widget which is in its state. So whenever this particular widget initiates or creates or whatever you want to call it, this function, this is called. So inside this, if I call this, this will be done. So let me just do that. Once I'm done with that, so I'm calling this function inside of this, so that whenever I'm starting this particular screen, whenever the search is opening, I can actually call this. But here's the catch. That is the wrong option. Sorry for that. We are not going to do that, because initially we don't have this search query. We actually want to do that only once the user clicks on that button, right? That's not a problem, that's fine. So this is not something which we want to do, but once we get this value, we want to actually set state. Set state. Why am I doing this set state? Because what will happen is we will see the value. Initially this is null, correct? So this will actually show an error. Okay, this is actually going to show an error of null, and after some time we will actually receive this value. This will update, but this will not. This will always show error. So that's why what we are doing, once this value is updated, we are reset set state. So what set state basically does, it recreates the whole screen with the updated data. Got it? Yeah. So that will be done. So let's do one more thing, which is, before showing this list view, we will check if this snapshot dot has is not equals to null, question mark. If it is not equals to null, then we will show the list. If it is equals to null, which means this condition is false, then we will just show a container, and showing a container means showing nothing, kind of. So let me save that, and if I will click on this search, hopefully something should be visible. Okay, we are getting this error, and that error mentions we have some error. Vertical viewport was given unbounded height. Okay, the problem is we are using a list view inside of a column. So whenever you do that, make sure to include a shrink wrap on that, and then you can save that. Okay, so congratulations, we are not exactly in the same place, but we are quite close. So what is the next step we want to do? Well, we want to kind of make them first from the start. This is a kind of in the center. So we will use the cross-axis alignment property, which we discussed before, and cross-axis alignment dot start. So basically all the widget will be from the start. Now one thing which you can notice, that now this container is going to be handy because we want a padding. And how much padding do we want? Symmetrically we want horizontally around 24 padding, and vertically we can go with something like 16 or 8. So let's select 16, and if I will save that, you can see we have some amount of padding as well. I think this should have a vertical padding of 16. I'm not sure. I think, yeah, that's how it works. And then I can provide its style, and it's going to be medium text style. If I will save that, okay, it's visible. Let me provide the medium to this one as well. Medium text style. If I will save this, you can see it is visible. Okay, so far what we have done, we are able to search the user. Now what we want to do, when I will click on this button, I should create a chat room, okay, and then we should be sent to a chat, or basically conversation screen, where the user can send hello, hi, bye bye and stuff like that. Okay, so let's do that. So how can we do that? First, let me we want to do something when we click on this button, or when the user click on this button. So we will wrap this with a widget which is called gesture detector. You guessed it, bro. Okay, so now what we want to call a function. Why am I calling a function? Because I don't want to do it all over here. I want to create a function, and I can just call it, and it will do the rest for me. Okay, so let's discuss again what the function should do. Function should create a chat room. Then function should, let me just mention that so that it's much more clear. Create chat room. That's the first thing. Don't mind the spelling. That's not the I don't teach English. Now this is create chat room. The next thing which we want over here is we have the chat room. The next thing which we want, okay, before this I actually want to show should we show a loading? Let's skip that for now. I will create a chat room, send user to conversation screen. Now this is also a question. Should we go push, or should we go push replacement? I'm thinking for the push replacement, because user can always click on back and go to the home screen, which is actually the chat rooms screen, and he can just click on the search option, and can search for the user again, and kind of actually even the chat room will be available directly, so we can just go push replacement. Okay, now let's create that function. So that function is going to be called send or create chat room and send user and start conversation. I know it's a bigger name, but whatever, we gotta do what we gotta do. Okay, so to create a conversation or basically create a chat room, how it's going to be done, let me show you. So this is how I have planned it. I'm just going to create a collection which is going to be chat room. Next, it is going to have an auto, no, not auto, it's going to have chat rooms with the username, okay, so like this, and it is going to have some fields. The field is going to be users array username 2. Okay, then it's going to have chat room ID, so it's going to be same like this. This is how I have planned for the chat room to work. Basically, we will have the list of users. Now you may be thinking, why am I using array? Means that does not make sense. Like major of the time you may not require or be using array over here. Well, the reason why I am using array over here is because I want to show these chat rooms in the chat rooms, which is the main screen, according to if it contains. The problem is, if you see, for example, the equality one which we tested out, right? There is a condition of query for you can check if this particular is equals to that, then it will show that, right? So that was a one option. This is another option which you can do. We can basically test if this users array contains the username of the particular user who is actually using the app, and then we can show the chat rooms accordingly. If everything is going above the mind, don't worry, just keep watching. I'll make sure you understand everything, don't worry. Okay, because we will be implementing it now. So how can we do this programmatically? Because right now we have done it manually. So let's go ahead and keep it at this side so that we can be watching this and create this. So the name of the function is going to be create chat room. Okay, so let me do it like this. So first is going to be firestore.instance.collection. What is the name of the collection? Chat room. Okay, so is are we defining the document name or are we directly adding it? Well, we are defining the document. Okay, so if we are defining the document name, we should accept that. So I'm going to say string chat room ID. That's what the document name I am going to give. So let me give it like that. Dot. Now I can set data. Now this data is going to be this particular map. Now this map is going to be called chat room map, and that is what I'm going to, not char, it's going to be chat. Copy, paste. Also, let's make sure that we don't have we are not facing any error. If we do, we should be notified. You know, it's like if we have any problem, let me know. That's all what we're doing. Okay, so it's done. It's just time to have a semicolon, and now let's go to the search. And over here we have actually already created that database method one, so I can now use database method dot create chat room. It needs two things, right? The first thing is the chat room ID, and the second thing is going to be what? Users. Okay, that's the two things which we will add. Users is not a very tough one. We can just go ahead and create that list. It's a list, right? It's a list of type string. So how can we do that? We are going to say list string, and we can name it something like users itself. And as I mentioned before, to create a list, we will use these kind of brackets. Inside that, I can define both the username. The first one was what is provided by the user, so which was actually used in the initiation of the search. Not actually the initiation. Let me accept it. So I'm going to say string username. So this username is actually will be provided when I call that function, create chat room and start conversation. That username is going to be used. Second is going to be my name. My name. My name. Okay. To use my name, basically what will be our name. So what is the name of our own? So we are not actually saving that data, aren't we? So for that, we are actually going to use shared preference. What do we want to do? Well, the target is we want to save the data. We are actually, when we log in, we have a username, we have this email ID, and we want to save this data locally inside our phone, which can be accessed later on. It will be utilized not just on the search screen, but also in the chat rooms screen as well, when we will be searching for all the different chat rooms available for our username. So for that, we'll be using shared preference. So let's see how we will be doing that.